If you thought the first list of time anomalies was unsettling, wait until you hear these. History is full of bizarre moments when time didn't line up the way it should. Experiments that proved clocks run differently, ancient structures aligned with impossible precision, and stories of people who swore they slipped out of sync with the rest of the world. These are more anomalies in time that suggest something is wrong. In 1943, rumors began circulating that the US Navy conducted an experiment in Philadelphia that made the destroyer escort USS Eldridge invisible and possibly even teleported it. Crew members later spoke about nausea, disorientation, and lost time. While the Navy denies that it ever happened, documents show that during World War II, they were experimenting with powerful electromagnetic fields to hide ships from radar. Even if invisibility was never achieved, the fact that sailors reported blackouts and missing time during classified experiments leaves us questioning how far the Navy really went. In the 1970s, NASA launched the Pioneer 10 and 11 spacecraft to explore the outer solar system. But by the 1980s, scientists noticed something odd. The probes were slowing down in a way physics couldn't explain. For decades, this tiny drift baffled experts. Some said it was proof of time behaving differently in deep space. In 2012, researchers concluded it was likely due to uneven heat radiation pushing the crafts. Still, the fact that NASA had to spend decades reconciling why spacecraft clocks didn't match predictions shows how fragile our understanding of time really is. Disappearance stories often feel like fiction, but some are firmly real. Take Flight 19 in 1945. 5 Navy bombers vanished over the Bermuda Triangle during a training exercise. Their last radio transmissions describe instruments failing and compasses spinning. No wreckage was ever found. While explanations range from fuel shortages to storms, pilots' testimony about instruments losing track of time has never been fully explained. It's one of the many aviation cases where technology designed to measure time and direction simply just stopped working. Life aboard a nuclear submarine is one of the strangest human experiments in time. Crews spend months underwater, sealed inside steel with no natural light. With no sunrise or sunset to guide them, their internal clocks begin to drift. Studies have shown that without these natural cues, circadian rhythms completely collapse. Days stretch into 25 hours, sometimes even 26, while others shrink to 20. Sailors often don't even notice until they're exhausted, wired at the wrong hours, and losing track of what morning or night really means. When submariners finally return to the surface, many experience a kind of extreme jet lag as their bodies resync to the 24-hour world. Their sense of time is so warped that it can take weeks to fully recover. In some documented cases, sailors swore that missions felt shorter or longer than they actually were, almost as if they had lived through a different kind of timeline. It is definitely a reminder that without sunlight and natural rhythm, human beings literally lose the ability to measure what a day even is. In the 1960s, an Italian priest named Pellegrino Ernetti claimed he had helped build a machine called the chronovisor. According to him, it was no ordinary device. It could detect residual energy waves left behind by past events, effectively letting people watch history kind of like a broadcast. Ernetti even claimed he used it to witness the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and speeches by Cicero in ancient Rome. Of course, no hard evidence of the chronovisor ever surfaced, and Ernetti himself died before revealing any proof. But the story took an even darker turn decades later. Imagine if 300 years of history never happened. In the 1990s, German historian Herbert Illig proposed exactly that. He argued that the years between 1614 and 911 AD, the so-called Dark Ages, were largely fabricated. His evidence? Gaps in historical records, suspiciously few archaeological finds, and inconsistencies in the calendar introduced by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582. Illig believed powerful rulers, including Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, wanted to position themselves in the year 1000, so they simply invented the missing centuries. Mainstream historians reject the idea, pointing to evidence like tree ring data and astronomical events recorded during that time. Still, the fact that the theory can't be fully debunked leaves a chilling thought. What if parts of the past never even existed? In 2015, astronaut Scott Kelly spent nearly a year aboard the International Space Station, while his identical twin, Mark Kelly, stayed on Earth. When Scott returned in 2016, NASA compared the two. What they found was stunning. Scott's body had actually aged a tiny bit less than his brother's. This wasn't science fiction, it was relativity in action. Time itself moved differently for Scott, traveling at high speed in orbit. Even more bizarre, NASA discovered genetic changes. Scott's chromosomes showed altered telomere lengths, his gene expression was different, and his immune system had shifted. Some of the effects faded, but others remained permanent. The twin experiment proved two things. Time doesn't tick equally for everyone, and leaving Earth can make you biologically different. On June 30th, 2012, the world's official timekeepers added 1 extra second to atomic clocks to keep them in sync with Earth's rotation. Sounds simple, right? Well, wrong. The leap second caused chaos. Reddit, LinkedIn, and Qantas Airways all crashed. Some servers froze, others ran non-stop loops. The problem was that the computers don't like a day with 86,401 seconds instead of 86,400 seconds. To them, that second just shouldn't exist. Since 1972, leap seconds have been added 27 times. Each time, scientists basically have to patch up reality. It's proof that even Earth itself doesn't keep time perfect, and humans are constantly adjusting reality to match. When the Large Hadron Collider fired up in 2009, strange things happened. Just before a major experiment, a burst of liquid helium caused a shutdown. Days later, weird rumors spread. Two physicists had suggested that the Higgs boson might travel backward through time to sabotage its own discovery. While that sounds absolutely wild, what they really argued is that the equations of particle physics allow for time to flow in both directions, and something about the Higgs could cause effects that ripple backwards. Mainstream science never proved this, but the fact that respected physicists even published the idea shows how fragile our understanding of time really is.
And we're starting off the list with something pretty exciting. Possible alien megastructures on Tabby's star. So Tabby's star, scientifically known as KIC 8462852, which I think is a much catchier title. Tabby's star, just a bit of a mouthful. But it's become pretty popular in recent years. Astronomers have spotted unusual and irregular dimming patterns on the star. The star's brightness dims unpredictably, and at times way more than what's expected for your typical star. So because of the strangeness that seems to be going on with this star, it's led some to speculate that there could be alien megastructures on it. And yes, even scientists are saying it's a possibility. I know it sounds wild, but the idea is that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations might be constructing massive structures like Dyson spheres or swarms around the star. And the purpose of these hypothetical megastructures could be to intentionally block or harvest the star's light to be used as energy. This would cause the dimming effect that we see. Now, this is just one speculative hypothesis. There are others, but it's pretty cool to think that this may be a genuine sign of life out there in space. Next, let's talk about fast radio bursts. So fast radio bursts, or FRBs, are powerful, fleeting signals from deep space that last just a fraction of a second, up to 3 seconds at the most. Scientists use radio telescopes to detect these bursts, but they're still not exactly sure what causes them. One theory is that FRBs could be born from cataclysmic events like collisions between neutron stars and black holes, creating ripples in space-time that generate these intense signals. And there is also the possibility that they come from advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. What makes FRBs so strange, though, is the amount of energy that they send out. In just a millisecond, these bursts release as much energy as our sun emits in 3 entire days. And what's frustrating, though, is that they appear so sporadically, it's really tough to sit down and study them. So while there are possibilities as to what could be causing these signals, they're still pretty much a complete mystery. The Great Attractor. Now, that sounds like some cosmic horror right there, and it kinda is. The Great Attractor is a massive gravitational area of the universe that's pulling our Milky Way galaxy and numerous other galaxies toward it. And yeah, that's kind of scary. The Great Attractor was first identified in the 70s when scientists noticed that our Milky Way, along with other galaxies around us, weren't moving in the direction that gravitational forces alone could explain. Something massive and hidden seemed to be tugging at everything. Now, we can't directly see the Great Attractor, so astronomers have to rely on indirect observations and measurements to understand its existence. It's this unseen force of nature, very Lovecrafty. It's thought to be a concentration of both visible and dark matter, which is the invisible substance that makes up a large part of the universe. More on that later. So what happens though when we eventually get pulled into whatever this thing is? Luckily we'll be long dead, so no point really worrying about it. But a great cosmic force like this, it really does remind us how small and insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things. Next up we have space orcs. Yes, astronomers have spotted orcs in space. Orc standing for odd radio circles. Not quite as exciting as spotting green goblin monsters in space, but also less alarming. Like, would we really be able to lay our heads down at night and sleep comfortably knowing there were orcs? I don't think so. So odd radio circles. These circles are strange astronomical objects, and scientists aren't entirely sure what causes them. Scientists have spotted them by scanning the sky using radio telescopes. They're basically circular formations and don't match any known astronomical objects or phenomena. They're not galaxies, they're not stars or supernova, they're a total mystery, and because of this, they have the nickname WTF. Now, some scientists think they could be shockwaves from cosmic events, like an explosion or a collision that creates ripples that we detect as circles, but they could also come from unknown objects or phenomena we just haven't discovered yet, which is pretty cool. We got a very large space rock coming our way, a mega comet. Now, luckily, it's going to pass us by about 1 billion miles and won't be coming until 2031, but this thing really is massive. This thing, which was first spotted in 2021, is the biggest ever observed comet. It's 100,000 times the mass of your average comet. The comet is so big that at first astronomers categorized it as a minor planet. What's freaky about this is that there's almost definitely much larger comets whizzing around out there, and although this one luckily isn't going to make contact with us, there could be another one hurtling our way as we speak. That just hasn't been spotted yet.
In the 1990s, leaked Vatican documents suggested the Church had indeed investigated technologies that might record or reconstruct past moments. The Vatican even issued a strange statement warning that any such device, if real, would be classified as a dangerous tool. Was it a hoax? A metaphor? Or did Ernetti stumble onto something that governments and religious powers wanted kept hidden? Whatever the truth, the Chronovisor story highlights humanity's obsession with breaking through the barrier of time and the fear of what might happen if we were to succeed. In 2010, scientists at the National Institute of Standards and Technology ran one of the strangest yet simplest time experiments ever conducted. They placed 2 atomic clocks just a few centimeters apart, about the distance from maybe your feet to your head. The result? The clock that sat slightly higher ticked faster than the one below. It sounds kind of insane, but this is Einstein's relativity at work. Even the tiniest difference in gravitational pull is enough to alter the passage of time. If you stand on a mountain, time technically runs a fraction of a second faster for you than for someone at sea level. It's an effect too small for humans to feel day to day, but the fact that it can be measured proves beyond doubt that time isn't universal. It's elastic, bending to the laws of speed and gravity. It also means that your head is literally aging slightly faster than your feet every second of the day. In the book of Joshua, there's a passage describing the sun standing still in the sky for nearly a full day, giving the Israelites time to win a battle. For centuries, skeptics dismissed it as a piece of religious symbolism, but in the 20th century, historians noticed something strange. Ancient records from completely different cultures, Chinese, Egyptian, even Mesoamerican, describe a period of unusual daylight around the same era. Some modern astronomers have speculated that an astronomical event could explain it. A massive asteroid or comet passing near Earth might have altered the planet's rotation, creating what looked like a long day. Others suggest a massive volcanic eruption could have created strange refractions of sunlight. None of these explanations have been proven, but even if part of the story is true, it would mean our planet once experienced an actual pause in time. Something so rare it might never happen again. In 2011, the world of physics was rocked when scientists at CERN and Italy's Opera experiment announced something that should have been impossible. Neutrinos, tiny subatomic particles appearing to be traveling faster than the speed of light. If true, it would have shattered Einstein's theory of relativity, upending our understanding of physics and opening the door to time travel. For months, the scientific community debated furiously. Were we really seeing evidence of particles moving backward in time? Could cause and effect actually be reversed? Headlines around the globe declared that physics itself might be broken. Finally, in 2012, the truth emerged. A faulty cable connection had skewed the measurements. The neutrinos weren't defying relativity at all, but this is the eerie part. During those months of uncertainty, respected physicists genuinely believed they might be holding proof that time doesn't work the way we think. Even though the error was found, the memory of that moment lingers. For a brief window in history, the world thought we had seen a crack in the rules of reality itself. In 2003, the FBI reportedly arrested a man named Andrew Carlson who had turned $800 into $350 million in just 2 weeks of trading. The story, first published in Weekly World News, claimed Carlson confessed to being a time traveler from the year 2256. Most dismiss it as a tabloid fiction, but what makes the story linger is that real insider trading investigations at the time did involve individuals making impossibly accurate predictions. Whether Carlson existed or not, the case left people wondering if financial markets sometimes reveal cracks in time itself. In 1901, 2 English academics, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, visited the gardens of Versailles near Paris. While walking through, they suddenly felt the atmosphere shift. The air grew heavy, the light dimmed, and the people around them looked strange, wearing old-fashioned 18th century clothing. They even described seeing a woman sketching, who they later became convinced was Marie Antoinette herself. Just as quickly as it began, the vision ended and they were back in the modern gardens. Years later, they published a book called An Adventure, describing their bizarre encounter in vivid detail. Critics dismissed it as imagination, but here's what makes it harder to explain away. The 2 women accurately described architectural details and buildings in the gardens that no longer existed in 1901, but had been present in Marie Antoinette's time. They couldn't have known that from guidebooks. Was it a shared hallucination, a trick of the memory, or did they actually step into a pocket of the past? Over a century later, their testimony remains one of the most famous and unsettling time slip cases ever recorded. Calendars are supposed to keep time straight, but history shows they often don't. In 46 BC, Julius Caesar reformed the Roman calendar, creating the Julian system. To reset it, he declared what became known as the Year of Confusion, which lasted 445 days. Whole weeks were effectively invented to realign the seasons. People literally lived through extra time. Later in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII had to fix it again, which meant skipping 10 entire days. October 4th was followed immediately by October 15th. Imagine going to bed one night and waking up in a completely different week. Time, as humans live it, has always been flexible, and sometimes governments simply delete or invent days to make it fit. The Mayan calendar famously ended on December 21st, 2012, sparking worldwide fears of an apocalypse. While the end of the world didn't happen, what's real is that the Mayan system tracks time differently than ours. They use what's called the long count calendar, which operates on cycles far longer than years or centuries. Archaeologists now know December 2012 simply marked the end of one 5,125-year cycle and the beginning of another. But what's strange is how precisely the Mayans could align their timekeeping with astronomical events, far beyond what most ancient civilizations managed. Their calendar works almost flawlessly with modern astronomy, raising the question, how did they understand time so deeply thousands of years ago? In June 1980, residents of Catania, Sicily, started noticing something odd. Their clocks were running fast, not by hours, but by minutes, every day. Watches, alarm clocks, and even public systems all sped up. The anomaly lasted for days before disappearing without explanation. Italian scientists investigated and speculated it might have been electromagnetic interference, possibly from secret military equipment, but no solid cause was ever proven. For one eerie week, an entire city lived outside of normal time. In 1971, physicists Joseph Haffel and Richard Keating flew 4 atomic clocks around the world on commercial jets. When the clocks were compared to identical ones left on the ground, they were no longer synchronized. Clocks that flew eastward had lost time, while those that flew westward had gained it. The differences were tiny, just nanoseconds, but measurable and exactly what Einstein's theory predicted. The experiment was a breakthrough. Time itself isn't absolute. It bends and it shifts depending on speed and gravity. Reality isn't just one universal clock, it's billions of personal timelines all ticking at slightly different speeds. In 1582, when the Gregorian calendar was introduced, Catholic countries skipped ahead 10 days, but Russia refused to adopt it until 1918. By then, their calendar was 13 days out of sync with the rest of the world. For centuries, Russia literally lived in a different time than its neighbors. Historians point out this created confusion in diplomacy, trade, and even record keeping. In a very real sense, one of the largest nations on Earth was living in the wrong year compared to everyone else. In 2010, 33 miners in Chile were trapped underground for 69 days after a collapse at the San Jose mine. The world followed the rescue operation closely, but what many don't realize is that the men reported something even stranger than survival. They lost their sense of time. With no sunlight and only dim lamps, their internal clocks broke down. Some swore entire days had vanished. Others felt like one endless night stretched on forever. Psychologists later explained that without natural light cues, the human brain stops tracking 24-hour cycles. Time becomes much more elastic, stretching and collapsing in ways that feel impossible. When the men were finally rescued, many said they had no idea how long they had been down there. For them, the calendar outside didn't match the one that they experienced. It was proof that time isn't just physics, it's perception, and under the right conditions, even perception can collapse.
2010, a disturbing rumor started to spread that CERN might accidentally create a strangelet, a hypothetical particle that could turn all matter it touched into more strange matter. If that happened, it could consume the entire planet in seconds. Now, mainstream physicists dismissed the idea as unlikely. Leaked safety reports revealed that certain scientists had actually debated the risk, though. That alone was enough to frighten the public. And then years later, satellites recorded massive, unexplained bursts of radiation in Earth's upper atmosphere, the kind of anomaly some theorists connect to strange matter interactions. Now, no official link was ever made to CERN, but the coincidence fueled suspicion that the collider may have been brushing up against forces powerful enough to destabilize reality itself. For people already uneasy about the collider, the strange-lit panic was a sign we might be playing with fire. In 2016, CERN admitted they were running experiments to detect micro-black holes. Scientists reassured the public that these would be harmless and would evaporate instantly, but even the possibility was enough to unsettle some people. Micro-black holes are not like anything we can fully predict with current physics, and in theory, they could pierce the fabric of space-time itself. At almost the exact same time, people began reporting unusual phenomena. Sinkholes opening up without warning, mysterious booms heard across different countries, and strange lights in the sky. None of these events were officially connected to CERN, obviously, but the overlap in timing was suspicious. If micro-black holes were being created, even briefly, it is possible they didn't disappear quietly. Instead, they may have left tiny scars in reality that we're still living with today. When CERN announced the discovery of the Higgs boson in 2012, newspapers around the world called it God's particle. But behind the excitement, some scientists quietly raised some alarms. Theoretical physicists warned that if the Higgs field was unstable, it could trigger a vacuum collapse, an unstoppable chain reaction that would spread at the speed of light and erase reality as we know it. Nobel laureate Frank Wilczek went on record suggesting the discovery could pose a real danger to the universe. Strangely, that same year, reports of Mandela effect cases surged. Entire groups of people started insisting that logos, movie quotes, geography, that it all changed. Could this be coincidence, or did the discovery of the Higgs particle alter our universe so fundamentally we actually shifted into a safer version of reality without realizing it? In 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 disappeared without a trace, becoming one of the greatest aviation mysteries in history. Well, official investigations eventually concluded that it probably just crashed into the Indian Ocean. No large wreckage was found for years, and what made the event more unsettling was the timing, though. The disappearance happened during a period when CERN was running some of its most aggressive collision experiments. Small but vocal group of people suggested that if CERN had destabilized space-time, objects could literally fall out of our dimension. Sounds nuts, but the complete vanishing of a massive passenger jet without debris or signals, that is kind of suspicious. Could it be that the plane didn't simply crash, but slipped into a different reality altogether? Of course, there's no official evidence, but the timing has got people raising some questions. Something unusual happened in 2016. Around the world, people started reporting reality glitches at a much higher rate than ever before. Famous movie lines no longer matched what people remembered. Historical dates were slightly off, and even geography seemed to change in subtle but noticeable ways. I remember me personally, I learned about the Mandela effect in 2016. CERN's collider reached record-breaking energy levels that year, though, smashing protons together at 13 tera-electronvolts, which is the highest energy ever achieved in human history. Some researchers speculated that at such extreme energy levels, CERN might have briefly accessed parallel universes or altered the quantum structure of our own. For ordinary people, 2016 felt like the year the world suddenly tilted in some strange ways, as if we had merged maybe with another timeline. CERN really was opening tiny doors into parallel universes. This may have been the moment when two of them fused into one. In June of 2016, residents living near CERN's facility in Geneva began circulating photographs of a bizarre swirling vortex that appeared in the sky directly above the collider. The images showed this dark circular cloud formation that looked eerily like a portal opening in the atmosphere. Around the same time, the region was hit by unusually intense lightning storms, adding to the eeriness of it all. Meteorologists insisted it was a weather phenomenon, but for a lot of people, the coincidence was just too weird. CERN was running its most powerful experiments ever, and suddenly, this perfect vortex appeared above it. Even now, the photographs are online, and there's theories that CERN may have accidentally torn open a hole in space-time, if only for a brief moment. For those already wary of the collider, it didn't really ease their feelings about it. Standing outside CERN's headquarters is a bronze statue of the Hindu god Shiva, known as the Cosmic Destroyer. The statue itself is real. It was gifted to CERN by the Indian government in 2004. But in 2016, something strange happened. There was a leaked video that showed people in lab coats performing what appeared to be a ritual sacrifice in front of the statue. CERN dismissed the footage as a prank staged by employees, but some people were pretty disturbed by the imagery. Shiva's role in Hindu mythology is destroy one cycle of existence so that another can begin. Kind of a fitting symbol for a facility smashing the building blocks of reality apart. Staged or not, the video really didn't do much to help ease people's suspicions, all the conspiracies and stuff. I don't know. Are they meddling with things bigger than they're letting on? Who knows? In 2017, scientists noticed strange anomalies in the Global Positioning System, GPS satellites, which rely on incredibly precise timing, began showing discrepancies that could not be explained by ordinary errors. These glitches appeared soon after CERN ran another round of high-energy experiments. The problem with GPS is that even the slightest distortion in space-time can throw its timing off. Since the system depends on relativity, some quietly speculated that if CERN warped space-time, even for a fraction of a second, the effects could ripple outward and impact satellite networks. Officially, the errors were attributed to software bugs, but skeptics believe this was one of the clearest real-world signs that CERN's activities were bleeding into our everyday reality. For something as critical as GPS, even a small, unexplained glitch can be deeply disturbing. In late 2015, just before CERN announced new high-energy collisions, astrophysicists detected bursts of high-energy particles hitting Earth that could not be explained by solar activity or cosmic rays. These bursts appeared suddenly, spiking detectors across multiple observatories. What made this so unsettling was, again, the timing lined up almost perfectly with CERN ramping up the collider to nearly double the energy it was before. Official reports avoided making a connection, of course, but researchers admitted they'd never seen anything quite like this. Some theorists suggested that if CERN's experiments had briefly punctured space-time, energy could have leaked out as a kind of particle storm hitting Earth from nowhere. The anomaly eventually faded, but for many, it remains one of the most disturbing signs that CERN's work may not be fully contained. Finally, imagine waking up one day and realizing your memories don't match reality. That is exactly what millions of people began experiencing around 2010, shortly after CERN's collider started running at full power. The Mandela effect, a phenomenon where entire groups of people remember history differently. It suddenly exploded in popularity around this time. Some swore Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 80s, only to discover he lived till 2013. Others said childhood staples like the Berenstain Bears, is now Bernstein Bears, and CERN's high-energy experiments started in 2008. Within 2 years, all these collective memory glitches, they seem to be getting talked about a lot more. Skeptics say it's just people's faulty memory, but the number of people experiencing the same misremembered details, it makes some people wonder if we slipped into an alternate timeline. If CERN's experiments really did shift us to a new version of reality, the Mandela effect might be the first widespread clue.
Beneath the Appalachian Mountains, there's something scientists call the Northern Appalachian Anomaly, but most people just call it the Blob. It's basically a massive pocket of super hot rock sitting about 125 miles under New England and stretching more than 200 miles across. What's weird is that there hasn't been much geological activity in the Appalachians for nearly 200 million years. So the fact that this blob is even there never really made sense. For years, scientists thought it was leftover heat from when North America split from Africa, but new research shows that's not true. Instead, it looks like the blob actually formed about 80 million years ago, when Greenland separated from North America. When continents split, the Earth's mantle pushes upward to fill the gaps. creating waves of hot rock called mantle waves. This one's been slowly drifting southwest, about 12 miles every million years. And it's still moving today. The blob might even be the reason the Appalachians are still standing tall, even after millions of years of erosion. That heat underneath can make the crust lighter and cause uplift, almost like a hot air balloon rising. And for those living in New York, prepare yourselves, because the Appalachian blob is on track to reach you in about 10 to 15 million years. Up in Canada's Yukon, there's a fault line called the Tintina Fault, and scientists think it could be a ticking time bomb. It runs for about 620 miles, stretching into Alaska. Now, it's been quiet for about 12,000 years, and that might sound reassuring, but that usually just means stress has been building up, waiting for the right moment to snap. Researchers recently focused on a 130-kilometer stretch near Dawson City, a small town of around 1,600 people. With satellite scans, LiDAR, and drone maps, they spotted huge scars in the land that show this fault has ripped apart before. One spot showed the ground had shifted more than 3,000 feet, the sign of a long chain of powerful quakes millions of years back. Another break in the ground pointed to big earthquakes about 132,000 years ago, but for the last 12,000 years, nothing, which means all that energy has just been sitting there. The team says the fault is moving less than a millimeter a year, but over thousands of years, that adds up. If it goes, it could unleash a quake over magnitude 7.5. That's the same level as Haiti in 2010 or China's Tangshan quake in 1976. Even though the Yukon is way less populated, something that size could still wreck highways, mines, and set off massive landslides. The Neeland Geyser, nicknamed the Slow One, is a mud pot in Southern California that actually moves a lot. It sits near the San Andreas Fault and has been creeping across the ground since around 2015, eating into roads, railways, and pipelines as it goes. At first it moved about 20 feet a year, then by 2020 it was creeping 10 feet a month. People have tried everything to stop it. Engineers drilled wells to let off pressure, and they built steel walls, pumped out thousands of gallons of muddy water, and dumped rocks into the basin, but the geyser just pushes right through. In 2018 it broke through a steel wall, forming a huge sinkhole, swallowing the rocks it dumped in. It even ran into the Union Pacific Railroad, forcing crews to build temporary tracks. State Route 111 has also been in the geyser's way. Over $20 million was spent building temporary roads, drainage systems, and steel barriers to divert the mud and water. Pipelines and fiber optic lines nearby have had to be moved as well. But the Slow One just keeps inching along, slowly eating away at whatever is in its path. Back in the 60s, a geologist named Jack Oliver picked up something strange on his instruments. It was a steady pulse coming from Earth every 26 seconds. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a perfectly consistent beat. More than 60 years later, scientists still don't fully know what's causing it. They've narrowed it down to one location though, a spot in the Gulf of Guinea, off the coast of Africa, but they still don't know what's causing it. One theory is that it's the ocean. The continental shelf in that area acts kind of like a giant drum, and when waves crash against it in just the right way, it could set off a repeating vibration. But not everyone is convinced the ocean is to blame here. There's a volcano on an island right near where the pulse comes from, and some researchers think, well, that's more likely the culprit. Tiny volcanic tremors happen in other parts of the world, like Japan, so it's not impossible that this one is volcanic too. Even with all our advanced technology though, the mystery hasn't been fully solved. Seismologists admit they tend to focus on bigger, more dangerous quakes over, weird little heartbeats in the earth, and fair enough, but for some reason, every 26 seconds, like clockwork, it's still there thumping away under the ocean. Over the South Atlantic Ocean, there's a weird spot in Earth's magnetic field called the South Atlantic Anomaly, or SAA, and it's getting bigger. Basically, the magnetic field there is weaker than usual, which lets more cosmic radiation sneak down toward the planet. And that might not sound all that scary, but satellites and spacecraft flying through the area can get zapped and can cause electronics to glitch or just fail completely. Astronauts are at risk too if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. The problem comes from Earth's core, where molten iron and nickel swirl around and generate our magnetic field. Sometimes those flows shift or slow down, and that can make weak spots like the SAA show up. One theory is that a huge chunk of rock under Africa is messing with the flow, creating this magnetic dent that's growing and moving. NASA's watching it closely because the anomaly is expanding and creeping toward other areas, and that means more satellites could be affected, which would mess with communication, GPS, and even power grids on Earth if a big solar storm hits at the wrong time. Out in the Indian Ocean, there's a strange spot called the Indian Ocean Geoid Low, or IOGL. It's basically a giant gravity hole covering about 3 million square kilometers, almost the size of India. Scientists first noticed it back in 1948 when a Dutch geophysicist measured gravity from a ship. So, what do I mean by gravity hole though? Well, gravity there is weaker than usual, which means if you could somehow smooth out the tides and currents, just make it all flat and glassy, the sea level in that specific area would actually be hundreds of feet lower than the global average. What's causing it? Well, one idea is that it has to do with plate tectonics. Millions of years ago, the land that is now India drifted away from Africa. Pieces of the old ocean floor in between sank down into the earth. Hot, lighter rock from deep inside the earth pushed up around these pieces, making that area less dense. Since lighter stuff pulls less, gravity there is weaker, which would be why this gravity hole exists. Out in the Central African Republic, right around its capital, Bangui, there's a huge, strange spot in Earth's magnetic field. See, normally Earth's magnetic field is like a smooth and visible shield surrounding the planet, protecting us from cosmic radiation. But over Bangui, this shield gets weird. The magnetic pull is weaker than it should be, and it doesn't line up like it does everywhere else. Scientists call this the Bangui magnetic anomaly, and it's one of the biggest and strongest weird spots in Africa. It's massive, about 700 by 1,000 kilometers. No one really knows why it's there. The underground rocks are ancient, billions of years old, and the crust around it is uneven, which might be part of the reason for the strange magnetic behavior. As for how it formed, there are two main ideas. One is that a huge blob of rock pushed up from deep under the earth, messing with the magnetic field above. The other is that a giant meteorite slammed into the area hundreds of millions of years ago. The impact would have smashed and rearranged the rocks below, possibly creating pockets of magnetic material that mess with the field above. Deep beneath northeastern China, way down in the mantle, between about 700 and 1400 kilometers under the surface, scientists have found something strange called the Beijing anomaly. Basically, seismic waves, vibrations from earthquakes that normally travel through the earth, slow down a lot in this area, which is unusual. Researchers Jesse Lawrence and Michael Weissession think the reason might be water trapped deep in the mantle. Even a tiny amount of water down there, like a fraction of a percent, can really affect how these waves move, causing them to lose energy and slow down. The Beijing anomaly covers a huge area, so there must be a process spreading this water throughout the mantle. One idea is that water gets dragged deep into the earth by ocean floors as they slowly slide under the continents. The middle of these sinking slabs stays cool, so the water doesn't evaporate, even under extreme heat and pressure. And over time, some of that water seeps out into the surrounding mantle, making pockets that are wetter and softer than normal. Just the top layer of these sinking slabs is enough to explain all the weird seismic readings. Next up is the Kursk magnetic anomaly in southwestern Russia, near the Ukrainian border. This area is so magnetically charged that it messes with compasses. Some say it's like Earth's third magnetic pole. This is the largest magnetic anomaly on Earth. It spans nearly 50,000 square miles. It contains more than 30 billion tons of iron ore. Some estimates say it holds close to 50% of the Earth's total iron ore reserves. The magnetic weirdness is thanks to that iron ore. It's so magnetic that it distorts Earth's magnetic field above it. The Kursk magnetic anomaly was first discovered in 1773 by a Russian astronomer, but it wasn't until 1883 that the connection between the anomaly and the iron ore deposits was made. But if you're ever in the area though, and your compass starts acting up, you'll know why. Under the North Sea, not far from Britain, lies a buried mystery called the Silver Pit Crater. It's about 20 kilometers across and looks a lot like a classic impact crater, which is why, when it was first noticed in seismic data, some scientists thought a meteorite had smashed into the seafloor millions of years ago. If it was a space rock, It would have been 120 meters or just under 400 feet wide. The crater was spotted by geologists Simon Stewart and Philip Allen, who noticed unusual rings in the seismic scans. Stewart thought it could be a meteor, and the idea quickly made headlines in 2002 as potentially the first confirmed impact near Britain.
The North settled in Greenland around the 10th century, creating a colony that lasted for about 500 years. But then, in the late 15th century, they vanished. Now, it's not like it was uncommon for people to relocate back then, but what was strange about this was that they'd left behind a lot of their supplies and belongings. It was like they just evaporated. Historians and archaeologists still haven't come up with a clear answer. But there are theories. One is that environmental changes made life too hard for them, forcing the settlers to leave. Another is that local Inuits may have raided the colony, killing or capturing the settlers, but there weren't any clear signs of an attack. Everything had been left in a pretty tidy manner. If the Inuit had raided the colony, there would have been signs of a struggle, but the site had been found neat and intact. There's also the theory that a plague in the late 15th century, which hit Iceland and Norway, left many farms empty, meaning the Greenland settlers might have returned to Europe to claim the abandoned land, but that doesn't make much sense either. I mean, the Vikings back home would have known that these guys had returned. There wouldn't be much of a mystery, would there? This is a very strange case. Sacsay Huaman is an impressive Incan fort built in the 1400s, just outside of Cusco, Peru. The fort is famous for its massive stone walls, made from stones that each weigh around 100 to 120 tons. What's even more amazing, though, is how these stones fit together, which is perfectly. They also have these smooth finishes, almost like they were melted and then hardened again in a giant kiln. But back then there was no way they could have had a kiln big enough to do something like that. Researchers have been trying to figure out how the Incas managed to mold these stones for years. Some think they might have used mirrors or glass to focus sunlight and heat the stones until they were soft enough to fit together, but there's no evidence of a method like that having been used. Others have theorized that the stones may have been rough at first and then natural fires partially melted them together, but tests have shown that regular fires don't really get hot enough to melt the stone. Here's a theory for you. Maybe the Incas had some kind of a deal with a race of stone carving aliens, but I had to do it. In Jordan and Syria, there are mysterious stone circles spread across the desert plains. Some of these circles are huge. The smallest is about 720 feet wide, and the largest is more than 1,450 feet across. They're all between 3 and 5 feet high, and none of them have any openings or entrances, which is strange because if they'd been used to, say, house animals, you'd think there'd be doors or gates. By that same token, they don't really seem to have been used as burial sites either. The circles are incredibly well formed, though, almost perfectly round, which is surprising given how old they are. Archaeologists think they were built between 4500 BC and 2000 BC, a span of about 2500 years, which really doesn't narrow down their purpose much. Researchers believe there were once even more of these strange stone circles, but many have been destroyed as new towns and settlements were built. Scientists are still trying to figure out why they were used and who built them. There's also a strange circle of stones in Miami. In 1998, while preparing to build new condos in South Beach, developers came across something they'd never seen before. As they were tearing down old buildings and digging deep into the ground, they discovered a circle of 24 large holes, each filled with heavy limestone tablets. This discovery was so unusual that they had to call in archaeologists to investigate. The archaeologists found that these stones were arranged in a perfect circle, about 38 feet across. They also uncovered other ancient items like animal bones, shark teeth, and old axe heads made of basalt rock. After studying the area, the experts estimated that the Miami Circle was about 2,000 years old. The circle is believed to have been created by the Tequesta people, a tribe that lived in the region until the early 18th century. The Tequesta were known to be nomadic. Today, the Miami Circle sits right in the middle of the city. Researchers are still studying the site and the artifacts, but the purpose of the circle and even a lot about the Tequesta themselves is still a mystery. Alright, this story is one of the wildest and most mysterious tales from World War II. So in October of 1943 at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, the Navy was working on a top secret project to make ships invisible to enemy radar. The ship at the center of all this was the USS Eldridge. The story goes that they were using some kind of high-tech equipment involving powerful electromagnetic fields. When they turned on this equipment, something bizarre happened. The ship disappeared. Not just off radar, but physically vanished from sight. Some say it was teleported to Norfolk, Virginia, and then brought back to Philadelphia in just a few minutes. But the strangest part is what happened to the crew. When the ship reappeared, some sailors had been fused into the ship's metal. Others had gone missing entirely. The tale first came about in 1955 when a man named Carl Allen, who claimed to be a witness, sent a series of letters to a U.S. Navy research organization and a UFO researcher. Of course, the Navy denies that the experiment ever took place, and the letters are often chalked up to a very creative hoax. But there is a small chance something really did happen that day. I mean, hey, who knows? None of us were there. The story of John Zegras is often referenced as one of the eeriest examples of an alternate reality crossing over into our own, at least in some versions of the story. Anyway, yeah, this one falls into the realm of urban legends, but it is a pretty great story all the same. The story goes that in 1954, at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, a man handed over his passport, leaving the officials in utter confusion. His passport was from a country called Torrid. If you're wondering what Torrid is, well, it doesn't exist. They looked at the man, and he seemed completely normal. He was well dressed and polite, but he insisted that Torrid was a real country located between France and Spain, and he was shocked when the officials told him that that place just didn't exist. The man had other documents too, like a driver's license and bank statements, all from this place called Torrid. His passport even had stamps showing he had traveled to other countries before. The officials were just completely baffled. They checked maps and globes, and they were like, are we just crazy? But no, there was no Torrid. They put him in a nearby hotel while they investigated further, and they posted guards outside his room just to make sure he didn't leave. But when they went in to check on him the next morning, he'd disappeared. The room was on a high floor, no balcony, and the guards swore they didn't see or hear anything strange during the night. His documents also disappeared, leaving no trace of the mysterious man from Torrid. No one could figure out where he came from or where he went. So where does John Zegras come into the picture? Well, there is a documented case of a foreign man being detained in Japan for identity fraud, but it's never been 100% verified if John Zegras' story spawned the legend of the Torrid man or if his case was completely unrelated. All right, y'all know I love my cryptids, and these just might be the coolest cryptids I've ever heard of, neo-dinosaurs. I had never heard about these till fairly recently. These are exactly what they sound like, sightings of dinosaurs in modern times. And yes, there have been multiple sightings of these things in the Amazon basin, in Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. The most common type of neo-dinosaur reported in the Amazon is a large, long-necked amphibious animal that looks a lot like a sauropod. Then there are ones that look like iguanodons, and less frequently bipedal reptiles similar to Allosaurus. There have been tracks discovered that look like dinosaur-type footprints and actual sightings of the creatures themselves, if you can believe it, which most of you I'm sure can't. Fair play. One of the famous tales of these creatures comes from the British archaeologist and explorer Percy Fawcett. That's the guy who claimed to have found the lost city of Z. He claimed to have found these three-toed tracks in the forests of Brazil, and a friend of Fawcett claimed to have seen a large, long-necked reptile near the Brazil-Bolivia border. There were also reports of an iguanodon-like creature in Colombia in 1921, and a Brazilian named Alvaro Mesquita reported encountering a camptosaur-like animal on the shore of a swampy lake between the Purus River and the Juara River. And even as recently as 1995, geology students in Brazil's Sincora Mountains reported seeing two large creatures about 30 feet long with 8-foot necks and tails bathing in a river. Very bizarre. And I can understand why some people may not believe this. I just think it's a really cool idea. One of the most awe-inspiring and well-documented UFO sightings came in 1997. It was March 13th in Arizona, a clear, starry night. People were just going about their usual business
when out of nowhere, strange lights started to appear in the sky. And no, they were not stars. First, there was this V-shaped formation of 5 lights slowly gliding across the state. The lights were first spotted in the town of Henderson, Nevada, around 7:55 p.m., and from there they made their way to Arizona, passing over Prescott and heading towards Phoenix. As the lights moved, more and more people saw them. Hundreds, maybe even thousands, looked up and saw this weird, silent, glowing formation. Some folks described it as a massive, solid object blocking out the stars as it passed. The police were flooded with reports. Phone lines were lighting up in news and radio stations, and the odd V-shaped craft wasn't the only one reported. A police officer in Paulden, Arizona would report seeing a cluster of orange-colored lights. And later, around 10 p.m., there were a number of reports in the Phoenix area of a row of brilliant lights hovering in the sky, or slowly falling. It later came out that the Air National Guard had been carrying out test flights that night, but people were skeptical, and till this day, people still don't buy the official explanation. As for why that is, well, we could do a whole video on this case, but essentially, the military said one of the light formations was a plane, and the other sets of lights were flares, and it just didn't look like that. The story of the Orang Medan is one of the creepiest and most mysterious sea tales out there. It all started in 1947 when a distress call came in from a Dutch freighter named the SS Orang Medan. The message: all officers, including the captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge, possibly whole crew dead. Then there was some garbled Morse code, followed by the final words, "I die," which has always creeped me out. Rescue ships were quickly sent to check things out. When they boarded the ship, though, they found that the entire crew was indeed dead. Their bodies were scattered around the ship. Their faces were frozen in expressions of pure terror, and their arms were reaching out like they'd been trying to fight something off. There were no signs of physical injuries, though. The rescuers didn't have much time to figure things out either. Shortly after they arrived, a fire broke out in the ship's cargo hold. They had to abandon the vessel, which then exploded, sinking into the depths of the ocean. And another one of the most mysterious maritime tales in history is, of course, the case of the Mary Celeste. On December 4th of 1872, a ship called the Mary Celeste was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean. It was found completely empty of people, anyway. All the cargo, the food supplies, and the crew's belongings, they were all still in place. All that was missing was a single lifeboat. The Mary Celeste had left New York about a month earlier, led by Captain Benjamin Briggs. He was traveling with his wife, his young daughter, and 7 crew. The ship was headed for Italy. Now, everything seemed normal during the journey, and that's because we have the log entries. The last entry in the logbook, too, was just a regular note about the ship's position and weather. There were no clues in these logs about any sign of trouble. There was no sign of a struggle or any kind of damage to the ship. It looked like everyone had just calmly left in the lifeboat. But why? The weather was fine, the ship was in good shape. It was unlikely that pirates had attacked either, because again, nothing had been stolen, and there were no signs of violence. To this day, nobody knows what happened to Captain Briggs, his family, or the crew. One of the strangest phenomena caught on camera is the double sun effect. Basically, people have filmed what looks like 2 suns in the sky, and while this could be an optical illusion, some people think there could be something else going on. That what we're actually seeing is a glimpse into a parallel universe or an alternate reality. Jim Kaller, an astronomer at the University of Illinois, explains that the double sun is likely an optical refraction, but he calls it a, quote, pretty darn rare one, and admits that it's not fully explained by science, saying, "I doubt it's been computer modeled. There must have been some blob of atmosphere somewhere that caused this truly spectacular phenomenon, which in a sense is a mirage," end quote. Now, typically mirages happen when particles in the air bend light, but they're usually vertically aligned with the light source, not side by side like this double sun effect sometimes is. Kaller thinks that it could be a thick patch of atmosphere moving in front of the sun. There's even a historical reference to this in a book called Light and Color in the Outdoors by Flemish astronomer Marcel Meniart. He describes double sun phenomena in such detail that it almost matches the modern sightings. He wrote, "So many other instances have been reported that there is no longer any doubt about observations of sun and mock suns being at exactly the same altitude. But even with all this, experts still aren't sure what exactly causes this effect. Grant Perry, an atmospheric scientist, said, "This is not a common optical phenomenon that we're seeing here. It's definitely one of those effects that leaves you wondering, could we be seeing something more than just an optical illusion?" Imagine for a minute, if you will, that you've just died in a freak accident. Suddenly you open your eyes and an entity is standing over you explaining that you're dead, but has given you the opportunity to travel back in time to a universe running parallel to your own in order to save yourself from dying. Of course, what I've just outlined here is complete fantasy, but many people have watched this video here and conjured up similar ideas and stories. In this CCTV footage, we see two men walking down the street at night. Two men who look pretty similar, mind you, both wearing dark clothing, both around the same height, same male pattern baldness. Now the man trailing behind catches up to the dude in front and taps him on the shoulder just as a car passes, and then out of nowhere, this metal object swings out just in time for the guy to jump out of the way. If he hadn't received that warning tap on the shoulder, the thing would have plowed right into him. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this video. First of all, and what most people point out immediately about this video, is the fact that the guy who gives the warning tap seems to know what's about to happen. He doesn't look back and react like, oh god, we're about to be hit, I better warn this guy. No, he doesn't even seem concerned with his own safety at all. He just is always looking forward, taps the guy, totally calm, almost as if he's experienced this before. He also doesn't stick around, doesn't look at the guy directly, just taps him and then moves on, almost like he doesn't want to be seen. But why wouldn't he want the other guy to see his face? Why the hurry to get away? Well, the fun theory, of course, that started to spread online is that the dude who gave the tap is a time traveler, possibly even a future version of the dude who nearly got hit. Now, is this the only explanation? Well, of course not, but it's a fun idea, and I think there's enough strangeness about this video that it's not easy to chalk up to mere coincidence. Even if there's nothing extraordinary about this video, it's pretty miraculous how this man was mere inches from death. The multiverse theory may actually have some observational science evidence behind it. Scientists at the European Space Agency Planck Orbital Observatory have been studying something called CMB, or cosmic microwave background radiation. This radiation is left over from the early super hot stages of our universe. Now, back in 2010, a team from the UK, Canada, and the US discovered 4 strange circular patterns in the CMB. It's not clear what these patterns mean, but one cool idea is that they could be the result of our universe bumping into another one. In 2015, another scientist at the European Space Agency, Rand Ramchari, made a similar discovery. He took a model of the CMB and removed everything we know, like stars, gas, and dust, and expected the image to be pretty much blank. But when he did that, it wasn't blank at all. Chari found areas of the sky that were 4,500 times brighter than they should have been. His theory, those light patches could be imprints from a collision between our universe and another one. Let's talk about one of the most talked about photographs of all time, at least when it comes to the strange and unexplained. In 1941, a photo was snapped at the reopening of the South Fork Bridge in Goldbridge, British Columbia. At first glance, this looks like your typical historical photo. It's black and white. People are dressed in 40s clothes, old school cameras, all that stuff. But wait, there's one guy in the photo who immediately catches your eye. He's wearing more modern looking sunglasses, a printed t-shirt, and holding what looks like a camera that's too small for the time. People online have gone wild with the idea that this guy was a time traveler who slipped into the past wearing clothes from the future. A hipster from today somehow stuck in the middle of a 1940s photo. A pretty wild and far-fetched idea, and of course some people have tried to debunk this one, saying the sunglasses were actually a style from the 1920s. The printed t-shirt, well, on closer look, turns out it's just a sweater with a sports emblem on it. As for his camera, it was smaller than most, but portable cameras did exist back then. Boring, right? Well, Well, sure, maybe all of that makes sense, but it doesn't stop people from wondering. Because the guy does just stick out like a sore thumb, and at the end of the day, there's no way we can really know for sure. And that's not the only supposed time traveler captured on camera. There's also the story of Chaplin's time traveler. Take a look at this video here and see if you can spot anything odd, aside from the zebra statue. Yeah, see the woman walking in the background? Looks like she's holding something to her ear, right? Almost like a cell phone. Now, it's easy to look past this. I mean, cell phones are so common now that they almost seem like extensions of our bodies, but yeah, people didn't have cell phones back in the 1920s, in case you didn't know. Back in October of 2010, a filmmaker named George Clark uploaded a clip to YouTube titled Chaplin's Time Traveler. In the video, he's analyzing a bonus feature from the 1928 Charlie Chaplin movie, The Circus. The clip shows footage from the movie's Los Angeles premiere, and if you look closely, there's that woman walking by holding what appears to be a strange device to her ear. Clark thought she was talking into a mobile phone, something that definitely wouldn't have existed in 1928. So it got people talking. Was this footage of a time traveler? Had this woman slipped into an alternate timeline from the future? Well, it's probably exactly what happened, but some people have some other more out there ideas. Nicholas Jackson, for example, an associate editor at The Atlantic, pointed out that the woman could have just been using a portable hearing aid. This was a very new piece of technology at the time, so it wasn't common to see, but it is possible. But, I mean, isn't time travel, or the idea that this was a woman crossed over from another reality, more plausible to you than an old-timey hearing aid? Well, we're finally here. I've done videos on the channel before talking about the Mandela effect without ever directly discussing one of the most famous of all time, the Darth Vader Luke, I am your father line. While considering James Earl Jones just recently passed away, and the title of the video being Parallel Universes Captured on Camera, I thought I'd give my 2 cents on this one. According to huge swaths of the population, the version of Star Wars we watch now is not the one we remember, and I'm not talking about all the George Lucas edits. This goes deeper, almost like the version we watched when we were young was from some alternate universe, or we've all slipped into an alternate universe ourselves. At least those of us that remember the line being Luke, I am your father, and not just no, I am your father. Considering this is one of the most famous movie moments in history, it really is strange how often people would get this wrong. Every Vader impression at recess began with Luke. Parodies would get the line wrong. One that sticks out to me is in Toy Story 2 with Zurg's line, no, Buzz, I am your father. So what's going on here? Are a bunch of us simply misremembering the line, or have we all really slipped into a galaxy far, far away? So this video was posted to Reddit by user Upstairs Cash 8400, and it's pretty bizarre. At first it just looks like an empty street with a bird in the sky until you realize that that bird's not moving. Then things get even stranger when we see a mother and son both looking up at the bird, completely confused about what they're seeing. So this is not just a glitch in the video. Now, sure, they could be part of a hoax, but if they are, they do a pretty good job of acting it out. What makes this so weird is that there's nothing behind the bird. It's just open air. It's not near a building. It's not like it could be a sculpture or something. It's just hovering. No strings, nothing. Definitely a bizarre one. And finally, we have the WOW signal. This mysterious radio signal was picked up in 1977 by an Ohio State University radio telescope, lasting just 72 seconds. It got its name from astronomer Jerry R. Amon, who wrote WOW next to the data printout. The signal's frequency and intensity were unlike anything we've seen from natural sources, leading some to speculate that it could have come from extraterrestrial life, but there's another theory that it might have come from a parallel universe. Something, whatever created this signal, could have dipped into a black hole and is now in a completely different universe. Of course, less exciting explanations like a passing comet or space debris haven't been ruled out either. While there's no definitive proof of anything, it's definitely worth checking out the recording. It's pretty spooky sounding.
So a flock of mysterious glowing UFOs are spotted soaring at high speed near an Air Force base in Indiana this year, and it spooked dozens of onlookers. And we've got the wild video footage to prove it. So if you're looking at it, at least 6 yellowish orange orbs were captured on camera. They were flickering and hovering, and this was near Kokomo, just south of the Grissom Joint Air Reserve Base. And they vanished into the air all of a sudden. Now this was back in October, so not that long ago. Now you can hear one neighbor on the footage saying, "What is that?" I think those are UFOs and I really don't feel comfortable going to sleep tonight. Yeah, you and me both. Another stunned witness declares, what in the actual The zigzagging aircraft appeared as a huge rectangle with a clearly defined vapor shockwave on Doppler weather radar, according to one witness. Somebody else said, I've seen many easily explained radar anomalies over the years, but never a huge rectangle with a clearly defined wave and trail. So what's going on here, folks? Well, one witness said, judging by the image size, the rectangle would be approximately 20 miles in length. Now, some observers did say the bizarre orbs were likely flares dropped from a military aircraft. Yeah, Alejandro Rojas, an advisor at Enigma Labs, said, yeah, they look very clearly military flare things. Now, sure, yeah, that could be an answer, but I don't think it's a definite one. The strange sightings come after a whole wave of UFO reports near military sites. We're talking the Joint Base Langley Eustis in Virginia. That's where officials saw flashing red, green, and white lights in December of last year, and no, they were not Christmas lights. And also, folks, last I checked, the US Air Force has not given any explanation for the hovering lights, and you know they like to discredit things. They either say, no comment, this was that, so if they haven't said it, it's an anomaly. May I offer you some 10-foot tall aliens next? Here's the thing, anything over 7 feet tall is already terrifying to me, personally. Ditto for aliens on their own, no matter what they look like. So when you put those two together, hi, Alexa's nightmares manifested. A video showing two human-like creatures on top of a hill on an island in Brazil gained a lot of traction on social media this year. According to a New York Post report, the beings were, 10 feet tall and spotted at, let's see if I get this right, Ilha do Mel, which is an island more than 3 kilometers off of the coast of southeast Brazil. Now, this is a favorite spot for environmentally conscious travelers and beach lovers, and it is celebrated for its varied ecosystems. It's about 5 kilometers in length, 800 meters in width. It's a scenic mosaic of natural marvels. So if we're looking back at the video, you've got figure number 1 and figure number 2 is standing close by, and their appearance on the hilltop sparked a lot of chatter amongst locals. In the video, you see these are creatures that are standing confidently on top of the hill, and apparently, according to locals, it's difficult to reach, and the shrubbery on the hill barely reaches their knees. The pair could be seen swinging their arms in an eerily human-like manner, but not enough to convince eyewitnesses that they weren't watching aliens. Somebody in the video literally says, it's too big to be a person. Look at the way he moves, it's really weird. Look at the size of those, like it's very fast. For me, it's enough to see the speed with which this creature goes down the hill. Anyone who has done trails on this hill knows that you don't go down a hill like this in 1 to 2 minutes. That was according to somebody on Instagram, and somebody else said like the way they move reminded them a lot of the Men in Black critters. One person said, and I agree with this, one thing I do know, I'm never stepping foot there. So actually the Brazilian government kind of got in on the fun, for lack of a better word. They didn't confirm whether these were tourists from another country or another planet. They were just like, oh my gosh, surreal what happened on Ilha do Mel. And it's just like, okay, that's an interesting choice. Great summer, it's another story. Even strange beings seem to check it out. They like tweeted this and they're like, oh my god, we're gonna have fun with it. Folks, shouldn't we be concerned if these are aliens visiting? What do you think it was? Let me know.
Speaking of terrifying things hurtling towards us, let's talk about Andromeda. So Andromeda, the largest and nearest galaxy to our Milky Way, just happens to be on a collision course for it. One day it will collide with the Milky Way. And when the Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxies finally collide, it won't be a sudden smash. The process takes a very long time because of the vast distances between the stars, and stars are so far apart anyway that it's unlikely they'll collide individually. But the night sky will change, constellations will shift, the appearance of the night sky will be very different in the distant future. But this collision won't be happening until billions of years from now, so there's no need to really worry about it affecting life on Earth or even distant descendants of humanity. Fingers crossed we'll have gotten our act together and we'll be like far off on other planets by the time this happens. Next, let's talk about supernovas. Supernovas are incredibly powerful explosions that occur when massive stars reach the end of their lives. Now, the good news is that the nearest star capable of going supernova is still quite a distance away from us. We're talking many light years, but what if a supernova was so powerful that even if it was super far away, it could still affect us? What damage could it cause? Well, it could potentially affect Earth's atmosphere. The explosion releases an enormous amount of energy, including intense radiation, and this radiation, in theory, could interact with Earth's atmosphere, leading to the breakdown of the ozone layer. The ozone layer is crucial for life on Earth because it absorbs the majority of the sun's harmful UV radiation. So in this situation, we'd be in pretty big trouble. We'd basically burn up like in Terminator 2. Next up, we have the mystery as to what dark matter and dark energy consists of. Now, we know there's a lot of stuff in a galaxy, stars, planets, and gas, but when scientists calculate all the visible matter, it's not enough. The galaxies are spinning faster than they should be based on what we can see. Something extra is needed to explain this, and that something is called dark matter. Dark matter doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light, which is why we can't directly see it. It's the invisible scaffolding that's holding the visible parts of the galaxy together. But the invisible part, dark matter and dark energy, makes up 95% of the known universe, and that's a lot of mystery, energy, and matter. What we see, not just on a day-to-day basis here on Earth, but also when we look up at the billions of stars in the sky, that's still just barely even a sliver of reality. The universe is also constantly expanding. We know it's expanding because galaxies are slowly moving away from each other, but over time this expansion continues to speed up. Something is pushing the galaxies apart faster and faster. Scientists refer to this unseen energy as dark energy. Basically, dark matter is the invisible glue holding galaxies together, and dark energy is the mysterious repellent force making the universe expand. And we don't know what it is. Next on the list, we have the Tunguska event. This was a powerful explosion that occurred on June 30th of 1908 near the Tunguska River in Siberia, Russia. It's known as one of the most mysterious events in modern history. So there was a large impact or explosion that flattened about 80 million trees over an area of about 830 square miles. The shock wave from the blast was felt thousands of kilometers away. Strangely though, there was no impact crater found at the site. This led scientists to conclude that whatever caused the event must have disintegrated in the Earth's atmosphere before reaching the ground. What most scientists think is that this was caused by the airburst of a large meteoroid or comet. The energy released by the explosion was estimated to be equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, making it about 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Luckily, this happened in a very remote area, so only trees were affected, but that also means there weren't many witnesses. But a handful of people did report seeing a bright bluish light in the sky, accompanied by a series of thunderous noises. But of course, there's always been this question as to whether this was caused by a space rock or something else. And finally, I couldn't make this list without discussing the WOW signal. The WOW was a strange radio signal detected by astronomer Jerry Amon in 1977 while he was studying radio waves from space. Because he couldn't make out what the hell the signal was, he just wrote WOW on the printout of the signal, thus it got that name. It was a unique and very strong radio frequency that lasted about 72 seconds and came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. The signal was at a frequency of 1420 megahertz, a frequency that's usually associated with hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. What's strange is that the signal was never detected again though. Scientists naturally figured if it was a natural phenomenon, it would repeat, but from what we know, this was just a one-time thing. So is it possible this signal could have come from maybe an alien spacecraft? Yeah, it's a possibility. The WOW signal is still known as the strongest candidate for extraterrestrial radio transmission ever detected.
So this next video was courtesy of user Valhu on TikTok. They opened their front door to a creature that looks almost like a deer, but there's no ears and the eyes aren't in the right spots. So this is known as not deer in the cryptid community. And they're described as looking like a deer from a distance, but you get closer, you look at it longer, and you realize something just isn't right with how things are. Kind of like a bad puzzle. Their movements are described as similar to a newborn deer, but appearing as an adult, with some theories suggesting that the creature is double jointed, maybe has additional joints in its limbs. The most defining feature though is that not deers do not have eyes on the side of their head, but at the front, like a predator, like this video. They tend to hang out a lot in Tennessee, but granted this video did come from somewhere in Southern California, which, okay, like, You do you, maybe it traveled. I have theories that kind of relate back to alien beings and cryptids, but you don't need to hear me go on and blather on. I do that enough. So imagine that you're a homeowner. I know, big imagine in this economy. Heading out into your backyard to just throw away the trash, and then you're nose to nose with an alien. Now, I don't think that'll ever happen to me in this lifetime, mainly because I don't see myself owning a house in this economy, but anyways, we're gonna move on. I know folks who are homeowners that have dealt with bears invading the trash. They never tried to break through wooden doors. Very long story, happened to my dad, but anyways, back to aliens we go. So last June, there was a video that was circulating on the app formerly known as Twitter, and it depicted a non-human entity appearing briefly and blinking. The footage revealed a distinct form featuring 2 large eyes, aligning with the caller's previous description. And this caller reported, there's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one is inside it, and it has big eyes, and it's looking at us, and it's still there. Like, they were obviously panicking. Now, 3 men and a woman can be seen attempting to record the so-called non-human creature. Notably, one of them is armed with a personal safety device that I can't name by name. And all of them appear visibly frightened by the presence of this non-human entity that's just hanging out. Now, there's been no official statement by the police, but come on. So we got some video footage. There was a local newscast that broadcasted something, and it shows one officer walking into the backyard to be like, hey, we need to investigate. And there's a witness telling the police, I don't believe in it, but what I saw right now, I do believe in it. And I always say your greatest believers are always your biggest doubters originally. And the officer was like, yeah, you guys seem legit scared, so I don't blame you. Yeah. However, without any concrete evidence, the police has closed the case. But I don't know. What do you think you saw? So I'm not quite sure if this next thing is a large bug, an alien, or a UFO. So I'm gonna need your help to help me decipher just what on earth this, I don't know what it is. So there's a video. It's capturing this cloaked jellyfish-shaped object that's hanging out near, once again, a US military airbase, and it's caused a lot of chitter-chatter online. Everybody wants to know, what are we looking at? This very curious footage, recorded through a thermal imaging camera, kinda just adds to the complexity of UFO lore. So this video was initially shared by UFO investigator Jeremy Corbell, and it brought the incident into the public eye. He emphasized the incredible risk undertaken by an individual within military ranks to smuggle this footage into the public domain, because whistleblowers have a very bad history of disappearing if the government isn't happy, or just publicly discredited if their boss is in a good mood. So if we're going back to this jellyfish-looking unknown, I have a lot of questions. So this mesmerizing ballet unfolds as the unidentified, I don't know what, glides over a body of water, abruptly halts its movement, descends into the water with an almost ritualistic precision, and then for a suspended 17 minutes, embraces silence. And then, all of a sudden, it emerges from the water, launching itself into the sky at a 45-degree angle. So we do have an official statement from the Department of Defense. Sue Gao was like, oh, we have these very carefully crafted words, and she said, and I quote, because direct quotes, folks, we do not comment on the authenticity of alleged DoD material that may have been leaked. Okay. However, once again, folks, the Department of Defense is not exactly known for transparency. Yeah. So let's bring in some analysts, folks. One a Ross Coulthart, who kind of highlights the absence of a categorical denial. He's like, maybe this is a strategic maneuver by government entities. It's the nuanced dance of neither confirm nor deny. It is a classic diplomatic move when navigating the labyrinth of questions without revealing the cards held close to the chest. What do you think? Let me know, because my verdict, it's real.